Ever wanted to make your enemies explode just by looking at them? Well, if you are a Warlock main and you're into making things ignite, scorch and explode, well this one is going to be a great build which allows you to burn through enemies in no time at all. Well, today I'm going to run through a Dawn Chorus Solar 3.0 build. I'm going to have a look at the aspects, the fragments, the weapons, the exotic armour and also the mods. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for all the latest Destiny 2 content and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. And roughly 98% of viewers who watch This Week in Video Games aren't subscribed, so subscribe today and never miss an update. Well, this build is all about making things explode by adding Scorch and Ignite effects to enemies. Well, Scorch and Ignite, they're two new keywords related to Solar 3.0, which essentially mean damage over time and building up to solar explosions. Scorch is a damage over time debuff which you can apply to enemies with solar abilities, for example grenades, melee, super and some weapons and perks. And enemies can be scorched by solar damage, then it stacks, and enemies take damage over time. Ignite or Ignition is where enemies tally up enough stacks of Scorch to trigger a large explosion. This is great for massive ad clearing, and we can use a combination of aspects and fragments in our Solar 3.0 builds to maximise the effectiveness of our Scorch and Ignite. For example, the Ember of Eruption, so your solar ignitions have increased area of effect, or Ember of Blistering, defeat targets with solar ignitions, grants grenade energy. In short, we want to apply as much Scorch as possible to ignite and explode as many enemies as we possibly can. Okay, so let's have a look at the build in a little bit more detail, and first of all I'm going to have a look at the Solar 3.0 setup. So for my super, I'm using Dawn Blade, and for my grenade, I'm using a Fusion Grenade. My class ability, I'm using Healing Rift, and for my melee, I'm using the Incinerator Snap. Looking at the aspects then, I'm using Touch of Flame, so your Healing, Solar, Firebolt and Fusion Grenades have enhanced functionality, so I'm using Fusion Grenades here, and the Fusion Grenades explode twice. Then I'm also using Heat Rises, so you can fire weapons at melee and throw grenades while gliding, consume your grenade, and final blows while airborne increase the duration of heat rises and grant melee energy. That's going to be really important, so when we get our final blows while airborne, that's going to help us with more Incinerator Snaps, and that's going to help spread the Scorch and also eventually the Ignite effects. Well, next up let's have a look at the fragments, a really key part of this solar setup. So I'm using Ember of Char, your solar ignition spreads Scorch to affected targets. The Ember of Ashes, you apply more Scorch stacks to targets. Ember of Eruption, your solar ignitions have increased area of effect, and Ember of Blistering, so defeat targets with solar ignitions grant grenade energy. We're looking at it all together, so Touch of Flame is allowing our Fusion Grenade to explode twice, so that is really good. That's going to help explode our enemies, but the main thing that we're using here are our fragments. For example, Ignition spreads Scorch, so explosions are going to scorch nearby targets through Ember of Char. Ember of Ashes allows us to apply more Scorch to targets. Ember of Eruption increases the area of effect for our ignitions and solar explosions. And then Blistering grants us grenade energy through our ignitions. So basically we're maximising our Scorch and ignitions from the area of effect and also the spread too. Next up, let's have a look at our exotic armour for the build. So I'm using Dawn Chorus. This is an exotic Warlock helmet. And looking at the perk here, so we've got Rites of Ember. Your Daybreak projectiles cause targets to scorch on contact, and your Scorch effects deal more damage, and you gain a small amount of melee energy each time your Scorch effects damage a target. So our exotic armour allows us to deal more damage with our Scorch stacks, plus we're getting more melee back when dealing Scorch damage, allows us to scorch more through clicking our fingers with Incinerator Snap. Well, next up, let's have a look at the weapons. So for my kinetic slot, I'm using Reckless Endangerment. That is a favourite of mine this season. It's a legendary kinetic shotgun with a lightweight frame, means it's got superb handling, and key to this, you move faster with the weapon equipped. In the energy slot, I'm using Skyburner's Oath. This one is the exotic energy scout rifle. This one comes with a couple of perks, so Slug Rifle. The weapon lobs explosive slugs. When you're aiming down sights, these slugs travel fast and straight. So when you're firing from the hip, the explosion is larger and applies Scorch to the target. And then you got for the Empire, so this weapon is full auto, does extra damage to Cabal and penetrates Phalanx shields. So it's really good when you're coming up against the Cabal. That Slug Rifle is really the key perk that we're looking for. So Skyburner's Oath has seen a full rework for Solar 3.0, and basically it helps us spread more Scorch, and that is going to lead to even more explosions. We're talking about explosions, let's have a look at the power slot. I'm using Ascendancy. An Ascendancy is a legendary power rocket launcher with a precision frame, meaning the weapon fires a small auto-tracking missile, and missiles lock on 2 targets when aimed, and this one also comes with chain reaction, and that means solar explosions. So looking at the weapons overall, in our energy slot, Skyburner's Oath, we've got Slug Rifle here. That is the key one, really, especially when firing from the hip. That's going to help us spread Scorch even more, helping us build up to more ignitions and eventually more explosions. And then when we talk about solar explosions, you have to have a look at Ascendancy too. That comes with chain reaction. That is really, really good. But if you don't have Ascendancy, not to worry. But if you could choose a power weapon with chain reaction, that would be a very, very good combination. Well, finally then, let's have a look at the mods. So first of all, let's have a look at some basic Elemental Well mods. And then next we're going to have a look at how we can spice this build up with some artifact mods. But first of all, the Elemental Well mods. So we've got Elemental Ordnance. I'm using 2 of these. So defeat a combatant with a grenade. That spawns an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type. And that's going to be solar, of course. I'm using Bountiful Wells. So Elemental Well mods that cause you to spawn Elemental Wells can now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. Then we've got Explosive Well Maker, so rapidly defeating combatants with explosive damage spawns a solar Elemental Well. Then I'm using Font of Might, so picking up an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage of the same elemental type. So we've got a solar subclass, solar weapons, that is all good. And we're going to be spawning solar Elemental Wells, all building up to use Font of Might, and that is going to help us increase our damage output. Well then, you can enhance the build even further through these artifact mods. So Solar Fulmination, your ignition do increased damage and an increased radius. And then we've got Rays of Precision, so while radiant, Solar Precision Final Blows cause your combatants to ignite. So Solar Fulmination and Rays of Precision really, really take this build into overdrive, but you can use this build without them. But if you do have access to those mods, I definitely recommend using them. Well, let me know what you think of the build in the comments, and let me know if you've got any improvements. Well, that is it for this Unlimited Explosions with a Dawn Chorus Warlock Solar 3.0 build. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Destiny 2 content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can check me out on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again. I'll see you soon.
Location secured, Commander Zavala.
Good work, Carl. What intel did you discover?
There's an almost unreadable data artifact here labeled Oxa. It's heavily corrupted, but I'm able to make out MSund12 from the access log. What is Oxa, and who was MSund12?
Those are questions for another day, I suppose. But for now, well done.